Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me at the market site in Times Square, we have Phil Mackintosh. He's the chief economist over at Nasdaq. And we also have Gabor Gurbacs. He is the digital asset strategist at VanEck, MVIS. And we are very proud to announce our ETF Synapse, brought to you by Nasdaq and the CFA Society of New York on November 22nd, right here in New York City. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen. And really looking forward to this. I thought it was a fantastic job that we did last year in February, in November, as we bring together so many different players within the ETF space, including academia, asset managers, issuers. So, Phil, tell us about some of the topics that you will be addressing at the conference.
Sure. I think it's hard not to talk about the growth of ETFs because they're on a tear. There's been more ETFs and evolution in ETFs, and this year in particular there's been two new rules come out of the SEC, which I think are actually going to make the growth accelerate, not decelerate. So one of them is the SEC has a new ETF rule which makes it easier for anybody to launch an ETF, for any asset manager to come and launch an ETF. And the other thing that they've done is they've actually let active ETFs start to list as ETFs, or active mutual funds list as ETFs. So that opens the door. I know last year we talked a lot about smart beta and the growth of assets into smart beta, which is a stock picking strategy, but now you've actually got the ability to list any kind of active mutual fund as an ETF. I think there's going to be a whole lot more mutual funds that we're going to see come to the market as ETFs. And who knows, I might even bust some fake news myths as well.
Oh, that was one of my favorite pieces that you had put out there. Now, Gabor, as your name, your title implies, digital asset strategist, so I would imagine we're going to get some cryptocurrency conversation out of the conference.
Yeah, certainly. So I'm going to be focusing on mostly Bitcoin, a little bit of esports and maybe green bonds, and generally just innovation in the ETF space. I'm going to cover the latest development on Bitcoins and some of what we should look forward to in 2020. So it's going to be digital assets and innovation focus in 2020 and beyond for my part. I'm
definitely looking forward to that one. Now, Phil, let's go back to fake news here. Why is it so important to get real research and real facts within the ETF industry?
Yeah, I think the short answer is ETFs have been great for investors. And so it's important that all the skeptics out there with bad data are kind of pushed back against with some real data and make sure that the investors are confident that ETFs are going to do a good job. And some of the data points you hear, ETFs trade $100 billion a day, which is true. And people say that because that's so much trading, it's got to affect the way stocks trade. And the reality is, if you look at the data, it's not that important to stock trading. Stocks trade closer to $250, $300 billion a day. So it's a big number, but it's not impacting stocks like people think. Another data point that I heard recently is that the creations and redemptions of ETFs year to date has been $3 trillion. So again, a huge number that's kind of scary at the face of it. But then you add up the buying and selling of stocks this year, and it's closer to $100 trillion. So people pick these big numbers up and they look at the growth of ETFs, and I guess intuitively to them, it sounds like the ETFs are going to be having a major impact on the rest of the stocks in the market, but it's just not true. The US market is very liquid, very efficient, and so we're trying to get some of the real data out there to make sure people are aware of just how well they work together, actually.
All right, now Gabor, let's get a sneak peek into the crypto panel. There's been a lot of news around cryptocurrency and ETFs this year. What are some of the key themes you're going to be discussing with your panelists?
So I'm going to be discussing the path forward for a Bitcoin ETF and some of the recent developments around the VanEck 144A Bitcoin product, which we call a BTF, or a broker traded fund. This is sort of a restricted qualified institutional buyers only version of the ETF. So that's a very interesting and important development. Just yesterday, and one of our partners, 3iQ in Canada, has approved a Bitcoin-based closed-end fund that is trading on a public exchange. So North America is getting Bitcoin funds on real exchanges. So I'm going to be discussing how it may impact the SEC's view and decision path towards digital assets ETFs. We've also seen some central bank digital currency news, China supporting blockchain, and other central banks coming up potentially with stablecoin ideas and ways to sort of redefine or rewrite what money is. So we're going to be taking a look at some developments in China, some developments at the Fed, and on the corporate level as well.
What do you think the audience is going to get out of Synapse?
So I think in general, I always thought that the people generally don't have a good idea of what the next 5 years will look like because things change so fast. And I think at Synapse, we're going to give investors and whoever is attending a view on what the core pillars are for the next 5 years to come with respect to innovation, digital assets, and markets in general.
All right, now Phil, I'm going to wrap it up with you. Anything else on the agenda that you're looking forward to seeing?
I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing the attendees and finding out, last year we had a bunch of people, like you said, from all over the industry, experts, issuers, market makers, academics, researchers, and it's not a sales pitch. So what's great is we get to find out all the hot button issues, what people think, what the data is showing, and actually learn something. So hopefully we'll all come away having learned a lot more about how ETFs and markets work.
All right, we'll be covering the event live all throughout the day on Trade Talk, so it's certainly something to look forward to. Thank you both so much for joining us at MarketSite, and thank you for joining me on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.